share. Next speaker is Didier. Didier is also old participant in our conference with a lot of with a big contribution to everything in I'm afraid that I have to get out of the file and to load it again. This time I will not point on how many, how big sum Didier gifted to the cause of longevity, because I'm afraid that I will miss the number, the figure, as I did last year. But I want to stress on two different activities of Didier funded by himself. A regular issuing the so-called Fight Aging newsletter, extremely useful digest of all important achievements for the recent week. I am reading all that with big interest.
Angel, sorry to interrupt you, but the Fight Aging newsletter is not mine. This is the work of Reason, and this is really the best newsletter, I think. The Date of Death is newsletter that Reels published in French, English, Dutch, German, and Spanish. So it's less good, but it's still interesting, I hope. Okay. But the Fight Aging newsletter is not mine, it's from Reason, but it's an opportunity for me to say it's a great news, the best newsletter.
Sorry, I think also it is the best newsletter. It was my probably not exactly correct impression that you are the main person in this project. Anyway, it is recommended, it is educational, and it is scientific, and that is also very useful. Didier is even so kind to mark with color the most important text in the newsletters sent to us. That reminds me, my mother, who was marking the most important text in the news when I was studying in order to save my time. So thank you for that, Didier. You have the floor. You could share the screen. Yes.
Didier, you should turn on your microphone.
Sorry. Can you see the screen? Not yet, I think. Not yet, I think. Sorry for this. I think you can see the screen now. Eh?
Yes.
Yes. So hello. Thank you, Angel, for this presentation. Thank you for everybody for being here. So today I will speak about big data for longevity research, and especially what you can do for this, what you could do to help. But first I will begin with a few facts. Most of you, and I would even say with a few data. So facts and data about longevity. The most important one is that today, like every day, about 120,000 people will die of diseases related to old age. And this is in European countries, about 90% of all deaths together. In the world, about 70%. And even in the poorest countries, it's about 50%. So this means if you are interested in life itself, in not necessarily only in aging, there is nothing more important than combating aging. So we die, when we die of diseases related to aging, we die of three main causes: cardiovascular diseases. There, I would say medical science is progressing fast. Cancers, medical science and medical research is also progressing fast, a little bit slower, but still about 1% less death each year before COVID. And neurodegenerative diseases, especially Alzheimer, we are almost not progressing. We understand more, but we cannot fight neurodegenerative diseases yet. But the elephant in the room is the fact, like Ilya told you already, that most diseases and most even causes of death are influenced by aging. So infectious diseases like COVID, of course, but also when the people are falling, the chance to die is higher when you are older, even for road accidents and so on. You know that, once again, before COVID, life expectancy was rising about 2 to 3 months a year, but maximal lifespan is not rising. So we had a gain of 20, concerning the maximal lifespan, we had a gain of only about 20 years in more than 2,000 years. So the maximal, the first person who reached 100 years, it was during the Roman Empire. And the oldest person ever was probably Jeanne Calment, 122 years. She died 25 years ago, and today the oldest woman in the world is 118, and the oldest man only 112. What I think, and I think most people here, is it is very probably possible to find a treatment against aging within 15 to 30 years, but it will be complicated and expensive. And one of the ways to progress is to speak about big data. But before speaking of big data, I would say that there are reasons to be pessimistic for the next months and even years, like Ilya already told you, and he showed even the same schema. It's the life expectancy now, the last 2 years, decreasing with 1.5 years. At least I even heard for the United States that the situation at the moment was the situation as bad as in 1996, because in the US, life expectancies are decreasing since a few years. So this is really a very, very, very big problem for me. You can summarize it as the following. For the first time since, maybe for the first time of the history of humanity, but certainly for the first time since World War II, we have an increasing technological progress and a decrease of life expectancy. That's something that never happened in our lifetime. So there are fragile reasons, reasons and not reasons to be optimistic. We learn to work online. We are more interconnected than ever. And life has never been so precious culturally, also in the, let's say, in the life of governments, especially concerning old people. But that's already, I would say, disappearing the last months. No facts about digital health. So where is the information? Where is the digital information? In scientific literature, I will not speak about this today. Just to say that sadly, at the moment, there is no software really able to analyze data concerning longevity in the scientific literature and to, let's say, automatically find the most relevant information. The last attempt for this, the last big attempt for this was the beautiful software, the extraordinary software IBM Watson, but IBM Watson for health was quite a failure. So we could speak about this for long, but not today. So big data and health, a big part of information is in your smartphone and in the information that tech giants keep. But the biggest part is in administrations and medical institutions and clinical tests and so on, medical doctors, hospitals, health sectors, social security, scientific research. So there are people saying that 30% of big data is health big data. It's a gigantic part. You have in the world, you have hundreds of thousands of healthcare apps, already 400,000 for the health stores, like Garmin, like Watch, keeping information probably for billions of people, but there is at the moment zero public space to share health data for all. Why? I will come back to a few reasons, but first, one of the biggest problems concerning big data is the problem that some people call trash in, trash out. So to have useful big data, you need true big data. If you have a little bit of non-correct data, it can spoil the rest. You have the problems related to commercial software and to companies. So they are, in many cases, you have different software with different companies and no possibility, no interconnectivity. You have all questions related to anonymization and pseudonymization. A brief reminder, anonymization is when you make the information totally not anymore linked to a person. So it means that after that you cannot go back to the person. It's better for privacy, but it's less good for scientific research and also less good for the person, him or herself, if you want to come back to the person to give information. And then you have pseudonymization. So this is better for sharing data. This is better because you can go back to the person if you find something. But this is less good for privacy reasons because, of course, also, for example, the private companies can find information about you if they are good enough. Also, last thing, at the moment, since a lot of research and use of big data is made by private companies, it means that when there are negative results, they are not published. So this is very important that negative results are made available. Maybe the central part that I want to say today is actually we have already more than enough health data in the world to know which clinical test for humans and also which test for animals should be started immediately to go further, to know which existing drugs have very probably positive longevity effects, and to know, this is also important, of course, which existing drugs have very probably negative longevity effects. With the data that we already have in European countries, in the US, and in most other countries, we have more than enough. But the problem is that there is no interconnectivity. The problem is that there is no will to share this, and it is at the moment totally impossible to share the information. Now, I want to say a few words about the big data situation in Europe, because in Europe, it's probably the place where things are going theoretically really in the good direction. So this was a communication already a few years ago from the Commission to the European Parliament. So they say by 2025, the citizens from all the member states are able to share their health data with healthcare providers and authorities of their choice. So this and authority of their choice theoretically should mean also with scientific authorities, for example, to share for health. But okay, this is only a declaration, and sadly, it will not happen by 2025, I think, even if I would love to be wrong. I want to give my own country as an example where things are progressing theoretically very fast, but practically a little bit less. So each citizen has normally access to his or her own data. So that's called the My Health. I will show you after. And there is a lot of health data available on the website of Science Center. You can Google and you will see a lot of data concerning COVID, for example. But this is my online medical file just 2 years ago. No, it's going a little bit better, but you see, well, you probably don't understand Dutch, sorry, so I will translate. So this is written toegang niet geopend door het ziekenhuis. It means access not open by the hospital. And you see all the data that I should have access to. Actually, 2 years ago, nothing was available. Now it's, I would say it's going better. Results from lab I can access, but not the results from the hospital yet. In France, they have a beautiful project called Health Data Hub. You see, this is the official goal. We ensure easy, unified, transparent, and secure access to health data to improve the quality of care and support for patients. So to improve medical research normally, but this is practically, it's very, very, very complicated to have access to data. So somebody like Edouard de Bonneuil, who is a member of the International Longevity Alliance and living in France, could tell you, at one moment there were only 8 studies approved for hundreds of organizations asking to have access. There is one place in Europe, well, there are 2 places in Europe who are very good for sharing health data. One is Estland, but it's concentrated on let's say, medical aspects and not so much scientific research. But the other one is Finland with FinData. Normally there it's also great. So it permits to have secondary use of health data. So among other things, here also for research. So it's great, but there are not many studies published concerning Finland. So it's great in theory, but not working so good in the practically. Now, the legal and de facto situation in most countries of the world, you can summarize this as you have actually the obligation to share with private companies and public entities, public institutions, if you want to use their services. So when you go to the hospital, they don't ask you, do you want to share your data? No, they share your data. But you have sometimes some limited possibilities to use your data. In many countries, you can access theoretically, but practically it's very, very difficult or even almost impossible because of proprietary software, because of no obligation to make this electronically available and so on. So in most countries, most of the data can be used for the research, but only with aspects of private property, or even, yeah, in a sense, worse, with the property of public institutions, so paid by your own money, but that do not share it. So you are not allowed to share most of your data for science. in no country you are allowed to be legally the sole owner of your data, and in fact you are not allowed to share it with scientists. So you are allowed to binge drinking, to smoke 50 cigarettes a day, but you are not allowed to take small risk or even no risk to help science by scientific experiments. Sharing should be lawful, of course, and even if you decide to share your own data, scientists will have problems if they use your data because of ethical committees and so on. And even if scientists decide to use it, they will not be able to get it in official publication. So the central question, what can you do for a few possible open solutions? First, sorry for the constantly remind that most people are working to share health data for scientific and medical goals. When you ask to citizens in Belgium, but also in most countries, do you want to share your health data for scientific research? They always say majority, in the big majority is always saying yes, especially if there is no risk of use against them. And constantly remind that things like the GDPR in Europe and other rules are not above fundamental human rights, but must be compatible with them. So you can collaborate with private organizations. So there is the International Longevity Alliance, for example, where Ilya and Anton and myself and Jose also are active or members. There are also private for-profit companies who are theoretically ready to share health data, but please, if you collaborate with private companies, first share that the words about open sharing and so on are real words and not only in the, let's say, in the things that they are saying. Theoretically, we should, I think, cooperate with the international organizations like the World Health Organization. The problem is, at the moment, there is no big project at the international level, at the public international level, really to share information, but there is a great project at the European level. It's called the European Health Data Space. So there is a proposal for regulation, very recent, a few years ago, with 4 principles that are for me very important. First, interconnectivity of databases, of course, at the European level. Second, what they called altruist databases, so the principle that the companies who are handling your data cannot be for-profit organizations. So this means also no possible use for commercial goals. They even write explicitly no possibility to use against the people sharing their data, and of course can be shared with scientists. There are other ways for collective sharing of data. Just a reminder that quite a few people are speaking about, let's say, created data, so data that is artificially created. I don't think it's a very good way to solve the problems. It's kind of a very good way to avoid problems related to privacy. But as far as I know, there are a lot of problems with that. There are organizations like Solid. Their idea is to stock all health data or all data in general in one place, and where citizens can decide if they share it or not. And there is this complicated thing that's called federated learning, but people like Anton know more about this that I know. But the principle is that you can, let's say, put data in common without accessing the data, so with respect to privacy. A few legal and ethical aspects. The first one is, Health data is of course sensitive, but it's less sensitive than your political life, your sex life, much of your private life, all things related to money. So please also remind to people that there is exaggeration concerning the risk related to health sharing of data, especially when the health system is public, and especially when it is prohibited to sell health data, because when it is prohibited to sell health data, well, people are of course less tempted to, people and organizations are less tempted to steal it. I want to remind of the fact that actually the US is probably one of the best countries to share data in general for civil servants. That's kind of a paradox for probably for you, but in the US, a federal civil servant doesn't have a copyright protection if he's doing, he or she is doing something. There is all questions related to what people call sometimes patent left, all questions related to IP, so intellectual property aspects. So I think that to facilitate sharing of data, to facilitate the publication of negative results, and to facilitate research outside of the patentable fields, restriction or even not having patents, at least for work made with public money, would be very important. There is this big question, or do you own your health data, or is health data a common good? For me, we should consider health data as a common good. You have then more solidarity, it's less dangerous. Of course, we should, so that's logical, but I say it, once we have this big health data with interconnectivity, we should use artificial intelligence to understand it. There are beautiful progress concerning artificial intelligence with companies like DeepMind and in silico medicine, but for me, it's strange that yeah, Google Translate and DeepL can correct your mistakes automatically, but the best AI, like I said, IBM Watson for health, cannot enhance your health and cannot analyze medical information yet. So I come to the conclusion to say, yeah, first, today, or more precisely 2 years ago, because of COVID, once again, is the nicest day of the history of humanity. Today is, and sadly, even more after COVID, and sadly, even more after what's happening in a neighbor country of Bulgaria, most dangerous day of the history. There are more scientists, more access to knowledge, more cooperation, more goodwill, more generosity, and less violence than ever. But there is also more bureaucracy, red tape, and not only for institutions than ever. So the goal that Hills proposes is to create a system trusted by citizens, managed by a public institution or a non-profit organization, where by default opt-out, so the people who don't want can refuse, but only if they explicitly ask for it. All health data, anonymized or pseudonymized, can be used for scientific research and not for any other use. Of course, to start clinical tests and to progress in longevity research. And on the middle or long term, to enable everyone wishing it to live a radically longer and healthier life. Thank you for your attention. So Hills and Deila are among the organizations who are working resolutely for this. You have also, but I'm not member lifespan.io. I'm also a member of Humanity Plus. So all, let's say, people who are interested in technological progress are in favor of this, or most. And you can subscribe to the newsletter, The Death of the Dead, freely for the first 2 centuries. After that, you have to pay. Thank you for your attention, and already thank you for your questions, remarks, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Didier. Comments and questions. David already put some
Yes.
questions in the chat. I will
Yes. So I will directly answer.
yes.
Yes. What is the likelihood of it being successful? I would say the likelihood of it being successful is quite high, because there is because in most European countries you have already a place where, or many European countries, maybe not most, but probably the most, you have also already a place where citizens can put the health data, and all European countries has already a good medical system, and most European countries, if not all, have already a public system. But the big question is how fast it will go. You know that, yeah, you know about the bureaucracy, you know about GDPR and so on. So I think the most we have citizens pushing for it, the fastest it could go. But this goal of 2025 that I was quoting, well, let's be honest, I don't think it will be the case. But maybe sometimes, you know, if there was a kind of like the COVID changed many things, and we changed many rules, and we I would say rightly left during the first months a lot of laws concerning privacy and so on. But after that, it declined again. So it depends on how people are willing. But if there was a political will, it could be something like a few months to have interconnectivity, and it could be even one day to have a part of the interconnectivity, you know. Then the question 2, in the big picture of how breakthrough with life extension are likely to happen in the future, how important is this vision of better sharing of health data? Maybe okay, so yes.
My question is, because you put a lot of emphasis on this sharing of health data, and it seems a good thing, but is it really so critical? Is it going to make the difference with reaching life extension?
So maybe I will come. I mean, of course, it's not enough. Of course, it's not enough. But I mean, my conviction. I will come back to one slide I was showing. And really, this one, you know, I will be back. I have to. Here, this one. So we have enough health data in the world, and so even only in the European Union, to know which clinical tests should be started immediately. Actually, we know already since at least 5 years, probably 10, that metformin test should be started. And we have enough to know which existing drugs have very probably positive longevity effects, and they're very probably negative longevity effects. The problem is that we don't share these data. So of course it would not.
But you say we already know. So why what's holding up the metformin trial? Doesn't seem to be lack of data sharing. It seems to be lack of financial will.
We have. Yeah. For metformin, in one sentence, I don't understand why this is not started. And theoretically, for example, Evolution, they have 1.5 billion, and for this clinical test to start, they need between 30 and 70 million. So it should be totally evident. Okay, but that's one example. But for most of the other aspects, we don't know because there is no interconnectivity of sharing data. But once again, I totally agree that I'm today speaking only about sharing health data. We could also dream about a world where we already start clinical tests and clinical trials with mice and rats with what we know, and it would accelerate also. So for me, there are, I would say, at least there are three central aspects to share knowledge, to start test on animals with really testing for lifespan, because testing something very short and kill the animals after, you don't see if it is really working for longevity, and then to start clinical trials. They are the three central points.
So to restate your answer, we don't know what we don't know. The evidence about metformin sort of appeared almost accidentally. People didn't expect it would have that kind of effect, and it was only because it was noticed from enough data. Oh, it seems that people who take metformin don't just get better from diabetes, they tend to live longer. That's a surprise. So it might be that if we're sharing data more, we would notice the same for other drugs, which currently we're not assuming could have anti-aging properties.
And maybe
still, I doubt that any of these drugs will make a big difference. I mean, metformin is not going to make us live 50 years longer. It might give us 2 or 3 years. So I think the biggest breakthroughs will not come from this sharing of data. It'll come from faster progress and more fundamental science.
Yeah, okay, I understand the point of view, but I mean also if you share health data, people will see the differences more clearly, and maybe I didn't speak about that, but to be honest, one of the important problems now is, and especially since COVID, is the fact that there are many complot theories, many, let's say, that I would say almost all medical big data with important results is contested. Like just 2 days ago, I saw somebody publishing information about 2 studies concerning the fact that people who are vaccinated die less than people who are not vaccinated, but immediately there was the question, oh, is the information not fake? So this is one very big problem that you could partly solve with interconnectivity, that you could partly solve with not-for-profit organizations handling the data, that you could partly solve if it was prohibited to sell data concerning health and so on. But yeah, I think we all know here that there is, if there was one solution enough for everything, we would know already. Maybe, sorry, I said 3 central things, but of course there is a fourth one is, and for this also, okay, there's a fourth one, it's using artificial intelligence and all technology for this, all technological progress, among other things, because it's useful for longevity, but also because we are living in a very dangerous world. So the more we use technology for health, the less, if we are using a lot of energy for health, we are using a little bit less of energy for bad things, let's say, too, or not useful.
Anton?
Yes. So my question was more about that you mentioned, Didier, that it's impossible in many countries to share your data with scientists, so like it's prohibited. Can you tell a bit more what exactly you mean?
Yes, that's I give always this funny example, but legally correct. So if I take here a look just in my own street, and I take a look to the people walking here, well, no problem, you know, I'm allowed. If I decide to follow the people in my street year per year to see how their health is degrading, and to try to have some elements, you know, people who are going, who are walking faster, live longer, and so on. This is prohibited. I don't have the authorization to do that without asking them what they think. So all, even something that is totally, let's say, without impact on these people, is already prohibited. So certainly using health data is also prohibited. And for example, Hills, with my money actually, is supporting an experiment in the US, in Canada, and also normally an international experiment where we will ask people what they take for their longevity, and where we will analyze their epigenetic data, first time before the beginning of the experiment, and the second time after 2 years. So this, just for this, we need an ethical authorization. It's called an IRB in the US and in Canada. And for this ethical authorization, it's already lasting since more than 1 year. So, and like I said also, of course, you can say, okay, I forget about this, all these rules. But if you forget about all these rules and you are doing it anyway, you will have a lot of difficulties to find scientists ready to do it, because they risk to have problems. And even if you find scientists to do it and they take the risk, they will have a lot of difficulties to be published. So
because we are lagging behind the schedule,
yeah.
I think that if there is no something very important to Didier, to say thank you to Didier for his contribution, and to go to the next speaker.
Let me just add one sentence more. If somebody here knows about, concerning the question of Anton, a country where it's easier to make a clinical test, I'm, you know, even things that are, let's say, not invasive, I'm interested. And of course, if you know about one country where sharing health data is working better, or one experiment that I didn't tell, please don't hesitate to tell me. Or people taking a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Didier.